This production has been authorized, vetted, evaluated, and approved for your consumption by Wild LLC. You're welcome.
Whoa!
Hey, what's going on? What's up?
Little bit of a different look here because we haven't really done a whole lot of wrestling with life in a while here. We're kind of getting ourselves back.
It's been
on
a minute.
track, but,
it's been a minute.
Here we are. I'm your host, King Ralph. He's Parmesan. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
We're good. We're here. Another episode of Wrestling with Life about to be happening. It was much overdue because we had a little teaser mania weekend. But now we can get the full effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is episode 14 of Wrestling with Life.
All
now,
right.
We're hitting some numbers with Opinion City, but 14 here for Wrestling with Life. This is exciting.
It's not bad.
Well, it gets us a chance to talk to some other people in the world of wrestling, and I think that's a really great thing too. So
absolutely.
Without further ado, Sean, why don't you tell everybody who we've got on the show today?
Yeah. I would say returning, but the first video is not out there. So this would be, I'll say, first time being on the podcast. It's Vinnie from Vinnie's Barbershop.
Hey!
What's happening? Hey, yo.
What's going on? Hey, yo.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm sitting crooked. I'm gonna just assume it's these Philadelphia row homes and absolutely not the fact that I've got.
It's probably the food. It might be the homes. It might be the homes.
Yeah, might be the homes. It might be the fact that my desk right now is a Kenner Ghostbusters Firehouse stacked on top of a Clue, a WWF, and a Star Wars board game.
Nice.
It looks stable. It looks stable.
It's more stable than some buildings I've been in. Some buildings we've been in to see wrestling shows. That's for sure.
Can we talk about that Ghostbusters like backdrop behind you where it looks like Ghostbusters?
Yeah, you want to dig right into this wall? All right.
I do. It's so sick.
I have an overwhelming urge to preface this, but you can already see what's happening, so there's no ability to preface this. Yeah. So are there I don't know. I'm woefully unfamiliar with how technology works. Is this just a purely visual podcast, or should I describe?
No. This is visual.
This is purely visual.
This is visual.
Okay.
So you're seeing it all, baby.
So yeah, if you're seeing this, my apologies to your look into my hyperfixations, which is to say Ghostbusters. So I can actually run through this. This bad boy is a Spirit Halloween 3/4 proton pack. This is a Spirit Halloween full-size proton pack that was released last year.
That's so cool.
This, and then this. God, doing this backwards is nightmarish. Those are all Kenner Real Ghostbusters proton packs. Obviously, these two are a little bit more intact. This bad boy is in bits and pieces, and then actually sitting down on the ground is a Kenner, not Kenner. That's a Hasbro HasLab pack from a few years ago with the Afterlife Spengler wand somewhere floating around this room. I have the 84 Neutrona wand. I could not tell you where that is, which is a really bad thing to admit about collectibles. What you saw also on this side is if you're familiar with Deadly Prey Gallery, they do I want to say mostly Ghanaian artists who do hand painted on burlap movie posters. If you haven't had a chance, if you've never heard of this, Deadly Prey Gallery, they just had a show at Philomoka where tomorrow there's a Pro Wrestling Explosion show. But there's a Deadly Prey exhibit there a few weekends ago where they were selling real pieces like this, as well as prints. It's really an amazing company. They do great work. The artists themselves get 100% of the proceeds, and Deadly Prey just acts as like an intermediary to sell them to weird Americans like myself who are like, yeah, I want this one of one
right.
hand painted
item.
Why not? And then throughout this whole room, like what you're seeing, this is tip of the iceberg collection stuff. There's Ghostbusters all over the place. I'm sure you saw there was a Star Wars Revenge of the Jedi poster over here. That was like an early teaser promo. It's like a media promo. So on the reverse side of it has like the press releases.
Mm-hmm.
I have a fairly considerable Pee Wee Herman collection hidden in here as well.
Wow.
Awesome.
R.I.P. to my man.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually, WrestleMania weekend when we talked last, I got rid of a chunk of my wrestling collection. I got rid of a lot of wrestling figures.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't displaying. I had bought a lot.
Yeah.
Like a box of wrestling figures that I was like, oh, I'm going to get into like old WCW and never did. So that's what the majority of that was. And there's a little Attitude Era stuff. And I was like, what do I need these Micro Machines cars for?
Right.
So I sold all of my wrestling figures, save for some of the figures of whom I'm friends.
Right.
So
right.
I did the same thing. I had a collection of the old Jack's Classic Superstars, and they were basically just sitting in bins in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
So it was time to get rid of them.
My dinner delivery
is it time? Is it time? Is it dinner time? I think this is the first Wrestling with Life dinner.
This is the first dinner episode, I think.
Yeah, I think we've ever had. This is fantastic.
Service. Yeah, this is the
setup.
This is fantastic.
Put your curry into this closable bowl.
This is amazing.
When you're done, you can put a lid on it.
I've got rice. I've got a thing.
This is awesome. Keep going. This is great. This is great.
Yeah, I've got a little serving tray with peanut sauce and my seitan satay.
Awesome. Love it. Love it.
I've got water. I'm good. Thank you. I love you.
Talk
about wrestling with life.
Seriously. Talk about listen. That's just it comes full circle now.
I'm not good about knowing the product of anything that I'm involved in, like wrestling included. Anytime I've done an interview, which is to say, it's not many, but anytime, I'm like, oh shit, I should have done research, and then I've not done research, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness this is a free form podcast that I think is as much about nothing as Seinfeld is, because
right. That's a pretty good analogy. It's a pretty good analogy.
pretty solid example of me wrestling with life every step of the way. So pardon me as I nosh on some Thai food.
Nosh away. I was just gonna ask. Speaking of wrestling with life, why don't you tell people who are unaware, kind of how you got into wrestling, and then how you got into Vinnie's Barbershop. The evolution of Vinnie, if you will.
Yeah. So barbering came first. All right. As with many people into wrestling, I was into wrestling as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my late 30s. The Attitude Era was where I found it. I remember seeing commercials for Raw's War as a kid, being like, what is this? And seeing people do Suck It on TV. I'm like, that's cool. I'm going to do that too, and not understanding it.
I had the OG black and green DX jersey that's now like impossible to find. I had that, and I loved it.
You don't have it anymore.
Nope, because it doesn't fit me anymore. I was a child, but it was the best thing. But it was the best thing I had for a while until I was like, and then until I threw it away, and I was so sad I had to throw it away because I outgrew it.
As worn exclusively by Road Dogg for like 7 years.
Yeah.
How ratty do you think his got? Do you think he ever replaced it?
Probably not. I don't think so.
I think of the Road Dogg Jesse James, and I can't imagine that man replaced that shirt ever.
Yeah, no, I don't think he did. I'm sure he had to, but
I'm sure I don't think he did. I think it was the same every time.
I think it was the same thing when he got to what was it, Rough and Rowdy? Was that?
Yeah.
Was that the?
Oh
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was into wrestling for a long time. I still have my one friend from high school, the one person I've kept in touch with. The only thing we talk about is professional wrestling.
There you go.
I'm like, you have a family and a child, and I own a business, and we're still like, you're like, oh hey, you remember Eddie Guerrero? I'm like, yeah, I remember Eddie Guerrero, dude. Like, I still cry every night. So yeah, big into wrestling. It's funny, in 2006 or 2007, so I was in my first year of college, 06 to 07.
Right.
I remember watching Beyond the Mat. That's the documentary.
Oh yeah. Beyond the, that's great.
And I looked up who was that? OVW, the guy who was running OVW, I think at the time, maybe whatever that dude's name was, Roland. I
don't know.
Roland or Rowan. I think it was Roland. I reached out to him and was like, hey, I think I want to become a professional wrestler. I'm a little bit of a smaller guy. At that time, I was the same height I am now. I'm 5'5", if those of you out there who didn't know this.
Right.
So I'm a little fella. And I was waifish then, about 40 pounds lighter than I am now.
Okay.
And I was like, I think I'm a smaller guy, so I think I have to be a high flyer, but I don't know how to do stuff. He's like, we could teach you how to do that.
There you go.
And I said, this seems dangerous, and I continued with college instead. There
you go. You're like, no thanks, I'm out.
I was let's that sounds scary. And so, I continued through school. I went to school for theater. I was by the time dual major in theater and communications. As broadly as I could say with communications, I studied both theory and production. So I was very big into film, TV, and radio production. So both of my majors, by the time I graduated, were very much geared toward writing and production. Very much toward writing. And then a year just out of college, I moved to the Bay Area of California and was working for a theater company. Hated it. It was like, oh no, I don't want to do this.
That's 2 for 2.
Right?
That's 2 for 2.
I still love writing. And every few years I'll meet someone who continues to write, and they inspire me. And I find that I actually do know how to write, and I love what I'm writing now that I've got life experience. And I still can't finish anything to save my life, but neither here nor there. So a year out of college, I'm living in the Bay Area with who is now my ex-wife. And she's like, I got to get back to the East Coast. I hate it here. I'm like, okay, I'll go, and I want to become a barber.
Right.
I don't remember the exact pathway that in the summer of 2011. I remember when it was. I don't remember why it was. But I sat and I thought about it for a while, and I was like, I want to do something that in my mind is something that doesn't exist anymore, because at that time, especially on the East Coast, the classic idea of a barbershop was just non-existent. There were salons. I went to a lot of salons as a kid. There were great clips, but when I was very little, I went to a barbershop that was owned by this old Italian man named Nick. There's another guy there named Vince. They both scared me, but and I can still remember the smell of the Bay Rum aftershave.
Nice.
And I was like, and that was at the time where on TV, if you were to ever put on History Channel, it was just marathons of American pickers. And I've always been into antiques.
Yep.
I've loved going to antiques and flea markets and like sidewalk sales, garage sales of people's old junk. I've always been a collector of antiquity. And I think at some point in my brain, I was like, what if I also do something for me, something work-wise that is also of antiquity? Right. So my mission became to become the old the old traditional barber that I knew in my brain,
Mm-hmm.
and doing that on the East Coast. And sure enough, I moved to Philadelphia because there's no need for barber school. You can just apprentice. I say just apprentice. It's the same thing. It's the same amount of hours. You have to pass the same exams.
Mm-hmm.
So I apprenticed at a shop that's in Center City of Philadelphia, Groom Barbershop.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for 4 years. That was like a very vintagey kind of style, more of like that was the era of the Mad Men styling. So that shop was also very much styled to be like an executive lounge kind of a thing, which I took with me. And then I moved to another shop that's actually on the opposite side of the neighborhood that my shop is in now. It's called Franklin's Barbershop, which someone once accurately and affectionately described as cosplaying as post-war America. Which was like it's a very charming and well curated space. The owner, Tony, he might have just turned 40 this year. A Navy vet who just, similar to me, loves antiquity, loves the romanticized idea of post-war America that we have, and knows that it's divorced from reality, kind of a thing. So like, if ever anyone gets a little too comfortable with how they're describing it, he's like, "Oh, don't get me wrong. I know that this world was fucked up. I like the aesthetic."
Right.
And so I took those kind of ideas of the executive lounge, the vintage Americana, and after 4 years at Franklin's Barbershop, I wasn't growing personally or professionally anymore. I was kind of hitting some hiccups in my personal life and personal growth that I needed a change. I wasn't sure what that change was going to be. Another friend had offered me a spot in her shop, and I was like, I think after having been at and seen 2 shops grow while I'm there, I need to figure out how to do that for myself. And in doing so, decided that starting my own shop was going to be the move. And that was, I left Franklin's about 3.25 years ago.
Okay.
To start Vinnie's Barbershop.
Right.
And that, that the rest, as they say, is history. It took me some time to find a shop, to find a space to rent, and then I built it out. If you were to ever come to my shop, you'd walk in, and as best as I can describe it, it is an amalgamation of my personality and my aesthetic choice for design. This is not it. This is not.
This is not it.
Don't look at this and think this is the way my life is. The maximal wall coverage, yes, but like there, I've very much designed it to look like a late 50s kind of
cool
bubblegum pop kind of barbershop. It's
Love that.
sign is neon. Designed and created by Antoine from Electro Romantic, who's blown up in the time since he made my sign. So I'm glad I got in on the ground level there.
Awesome.
Like it's pink walls. It's old horror movie posters on the wall. I have some lucha movies.
Oh, cool.
Lucha movie posters on the wall as well, because I'm a big fan of El Santo and Blue Demon. I've got an entire back section of the shop that is what I call the Tiki Lounge. It's got a mid-century couch. There's some like island ephemera all over the walls, just to give someone like a little place to maybe kick their feet in the sand and listen to Jimmy Buffett. I've got VHS tapes because not only does my vintage thought process go to the 50s and 60s, but also like to my childhood. So I've got a collection of like close to 100 VHS tapes that people
really
can just
cool.
pop into the VCR and play, but we've gotten to today. Like that was barber history. About 2015, 2016. So we're going back. This is at the time when I'm at my first barbershop. Me and one of the other barbers there, we're both wrestling fans. We hear about this local promotion called Chikara.
Yep.
And we're like, oh, there's this thing, National Pro Wrestling Day. Let's go to National Pro Wrestling Day.
There
you know
go.
what they have at National Pro Wrestling Day? During they're gonna have like a free seminar on if you've got what it takes to be a pro wrestler.
Right.
Like that, you know, and by this time I had I was pretty into fitness. I'd been doing CrossFit for a few years now.
Gotcha.
I'd gotten back into wrestling. I was watching from 2010 onward. So I got that like ending of when CM Punk was worthwhile.
Right.
And saw him leave on a high note. So that I was like, oh man, this dude's still fucking cool. That rules.
Right.
Daniel Bryan was on the way up. At that time, I was like, I think what got me into wrestling at that time, I was like, you know, we still have CM Punk and he seems to be cooler than I remember him being a few years ago. So that's great. And then there's this like kind of weak vegan guy that everyone's talking about. So I want to watch that. I've been vegan for God knows how long at this point.
Right.
And so I'm like, yeah, let me get into this. So I'm starting to watch that early Nexus stuff and getting into it. And it's been a few years and I hear about National Pro Wrestling Day. So I go and I get in the ring and they do the bump drill. Ralph, I'm sure you've seen, I don't know if you've seen it, Sean, but like, you know, sometimes they would have these little seminars on like, here's what it feels like to be a pro wrestler. And they would just run the most absolute basic class.
Right.
Yep.
And that was kind of it. I was like, let's see more of this promotion. And then I got to go see another Chikara show. I remember distinctly, I don't remember who was in the matches, but I know like Ophidian and Argus were in a stable at that time. I want to say Hallowicked and Frightmare had a thing that day.
That would have been the Challenge of the Immortals season where they were
the Challenge of the Immortals.
There you go.
It absolutely was, because I remember I joined right after that.
Gotcha.
So I saw whatever show this was. I want to say Jervis was there as well. Definitely the Colony.
Right.
It's so funny, and if I get a little choked up thinking about this, it's so funny thinking back on that time as a time, one, before I knew the inside baseball of wrestling more than any internet wrestling community, yapper will say, because I hate the word smark or mark.
Right.
I look back on that time and I think of where all of those people are now. And some of them still active on the indies. Some of them have retired. Some of them are bigger than we could have. Some of them I have action figures on the wall. Right there. Yeah. Like I'm looking at friends. I'm looking at haircuts I've done on an action
there you go.
Box. That's insane to me. But that all started. The reason I even have those is because of this one show that I went to, where someone then handed me a flyer for the Chikara Wrestle Factory afterwards. And say what you will about the people who were involved, the people who I don't ever want to interact with again myself. I'm like, for what it's worth, what they were making was at least intentional and magical. So I got a flyer. I started at the Chikara Wrestle Factory in early 2016, right after, if there was an Infinite Gauntlet that year, it was right after it that I went.
Okay.
That I started. Started right in the core curriculum. I'll never forget my first fucking class. Who was there? God. I remember meeting Travis Huckabee.
Oh, nice.
I remember meeting Razor Hawk. He had started 2 weeks prior to me.
Oh, wow.
2 weeks.
That's crazy.
Real quick. I'm gonna that like savant. One, I don't know how much older than me he is. but it's I'm 36. He's older than me by way more than I could ever care to remember, and it annoys me.
Right.
I want, like, I'll even go so far as to say probably 10 years, possibly 10 years older than me. He graduated from the Chikar Wrestle Factory. Graduated in 8 months. I think is the fastest anyone has ever graduated from their program.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Wow.
So, sorry everybody.
No,
No, you're good.
Yeah.
I've Sensei staring at me in the face.
This is our first Dinner with Vinnie and City Wrestling with Life
No.
episode.
Yeah.
Everyone's always like, "Oh, you guys should have a podcast." Every barbershop I've ever been in, I'm like, podcast with me will be boring. One, at a barbershop, I'm just like, it's stream of consciousness. It's terrible.
Right.
And
right.
two, if it's not in a podcast, I'm eating.
Right. You're right. Exactly.
So I started the Wrestle Factory. I meet Travis Huckabee, Razor Hawk. I believe Big Calix was there.
Oh yeah.
Big Calix. Yeah.
What was the name of the other fella from the Proteus wheel?
There was Big Calix.
would know.
There was
Help me.
oh jeez. Frantic.
Frantic was there. It was also his first day. It was also his first day. We started on the same day.
Crazy to think about.
And who was coaching that day? I met on that day Chuck Taylor.
Well, that'll change your life right there.
Oh,
that fellow was coaching. He was teaching the very first class I ever took. Kim was there, Princess Kimberly.
Mm-hmm.
Drew and Rory Gulak were both there.
Man,
Wow.
you are calling back to some old
On a roll, sir. On a roll.
This is the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget Chuck Taylor, day one, power slams.
Oh God.
Meanwhile, me and Frantic on day one, we're doing like tumble somersault and like back bumps.
Yeah.
And Dustin's like, all right, everyone, power slams.
Oh, man.
To this day, I've still never done a power slam. To this day,
there you go.
I was in that training program for like 3.5 years, and I had never done. So journey through wrestling.
That's
I stayed with the Chikara Wrestle Factory for 3+ years. It was 3.25, 3.5 years. Doesn't matter. And I had to call it quits because of the just mental toll it was taking on me. I was putting in a lot of work. Right. Admittedly, and this is where I will say the Wrestle Factory, I think, got it wrong compared to some other training schools. Other schools will just put you in a match to get you reps. And you're going to get reps until you're good. It might be in front of an audience. It might be a pre-show, right? We never did that. We had these things called incubators. Okay. And not everyone got booked on incubators. These were like random days where we would have like little mini shows. Everyone kind of rotated through ring crew jobs. And then whoever was not on ring crew jobs was probably booked on the show. The good thing about the incubators, they were run by one Fire Ant.
Okay.
They were booked by him, and it was thinking the best way I can describe it. It was his NXT. He was allowed to do with them what he wanted, right? And that allowed for some play. So it was very fun. Unfortunately, that was oftentimes the only time we got our reps in. And so this tag team that I was in didn't get the reps that we needed. And on top of that, my tag partner at that time, for just by sheer coincidence, was plagued with injury. Multiple injuries over the course of a year.
Wow. And then I do seem to remember that. Yeah.
You're right. And then instead of making him a valet and allowing me to get reps and pushing me into a temporary singles position until he healed. They just backburnered the characters, and then stripped them entirely and put me in one of the Crucible masks. And
okay.
Even then, I was so late to the game on the Crucible stuff because that had already been building that I wasn't even getting any play there.
Right.
I was like, so the 3+ years on Ring Crew without doing any performing was really taking a toll on me. So I was like, I gotta, like, my body is hurt. It's hurting my brain. I don't know why I'm showing up to train this much if I'm not performing. I'm here to perform. If we want to make this whole thing about this being an art form, let artists do art.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So that's where that ended for a time. I fell out of wrestling for a long time. I had just gone through a pretty nasty divorce, like right before or a year before all of this had happened. And honestly, actually, quick sidebar on that, wrestling gave me a massive distraction during my divorce. Massive distraction.
Right.
That was like through 2018. You might remember, like, I was really active in Chikara during that time.
Right.
And then it was Mania weekend of 2019. Don't know how many time of me being in Ring Crew. I remember on the way home from, that was 2019. That was up in New Jersey. It was New York, New Jersey Mania.
Right.
On the way back to Philadelphia, me and my former tag partner were driving back. And I was like, I think I've got one more Hallowicked class in me. And if I'm not stoked on it by the end of it, I think I'm done. And so I went. Then the next Thursday, Hallowicked was running the classes that were formerly Chuck Taylor's. And I left, and I was like, that was fun, but I don't want to do it again.
Right.
Gotcha.
And that was simply it. I emailed, I sent out like a blast email to Quack, Bryce, and like 3 of the instructors that I would see regularly. I think it was like Fire Ant, Hallowicked, and Ophidian. I was just like, that's about it for me and my brain. So, so I took some time out from watching wrestling, interacting with wrestling. I would still have several of the people I trained with come through for haircuts for a long time. I still do. Right. I still do. Like, they're buddies of mine. I can't. I love them.
Right.
Honestly, so in connecting my shop with wrestling, I realized at some point, once the business was open and running, Vinnie's Barbershop, my shop, that I wouldn't be there if it weren't for wrestling. It wouldn't be there if it weren't for a lot of things. My theatrical background, Ghostbusters, like, I can connect a lot of things. Like, there's a lot of connective tissue. It literally would not exist if it were not for the people I met in wrestling. So my way of giving back, and this is kind of where I'm at now, my way of giving back is, at least through the shop, now I can sponsor wrestling shows. You know, like this weekend, we've got Labor of Love at Attic Brewing again, like we did in Mania weekend this past April. Unfortunately, I can't make it, but at the very least, I was able to talk to Billy Avery today. He swung by the shop, grabbed a banner, grabbed a pack of stickers for the shop. So if you go down to Attic Brewing, or if they have to move the show because of weather, and I hope they don't, you know, hopefully you'll see, you can pick up a Vinnie's Barbershop sticker. But yeah, that's I've sponsored them. I've sponsored High Tension Wrestling. I would love to sponsor more things, and it's just like that like allowance is fairly limited. I find whenever I do that, I'm like, oh boy, the shop's doing good. I can afford to sponsor something, or I can afford to donate some money to a farm animal sanctuary that I love. And then suddenly we'll have like a slow 3 weeks, and I'm just like,
oh boy.
You're like, oh no.
oh boy, better cut more hair.
Right.
Looks like I'm gonna have to sell my Brutus the Barber beefcake collection.
Well, okay. So I've got 2 questions for you that are barbershop related.
Please.
And the one I've been thinking about for some time now. How jarring was it for you when you first were learning to cut hair and you walked in and you're like, wait a minute, you mean they don't cut hair with garden shears with red and white handles? I mean, was that jarring for you?
So it's actually really funny. My knowledge of Brutus came way later.
Right.
My 80s wrestling knowledge is woefully underserved until like I started to get into the history of wrestling through the Wrestle Factory. I remember there was this one time they were trying to like actually educate us on stuff, and they were like, let's have an actual class one day. So I read so many books on the history of wrestling, and I went back. I tried to be one of those living encyclopedias of matches and stuff. I was like, like if you ever get a chance to talk to Sidney Bacabella.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah.
I don't know how you know such specificity of wrestling, but that man's got a knowledge base. But like
that man's a riot. We had him on episode 36, I believe, and he somehow, crazy. Some way. I think my favorite part about interviewing them was that he was interviewed in and out of character at the same time.
Yeah, listen,
because he would answer a question in character and then sort of out of character and then back in character, but like you would barely notice it. Yeah, you would barely notice it, but like it was the weirdest thing, but the coolest thing.
It takes a special kind of person to be able to do that.
He's worked everywhere from Fritz Von Erich in Texas to Jerry Jarrett in Memphis.
Right.
Like he's been in all the territories.
Truly amazing that man was able to branch through every territory unscathed.
Yeah, right.
He's the only former 2-time WWF Hall of Fame.
Yes, facts.
That's
facts.
Okay, so that's number one. Now I've got Brutus the Barber out of the way. And this is something, now I want to get into the barbershop a little bit, but this is something I've always wondered about barbers. Do you cut your own hair? And if not, where do you go to get your hair cut?
There you go.
So
there you go.
This is the great thing about being a barber. You can always just go across the shop. You don't have to go anywhere else. I've got so many friends in the city who are excellent barbers who I would love to visit.
Yeah.
When at the end of the day, like the person I trust to have hired, like is literally one chair next to me. So I'm just like, it's great. Yeah. I used to cut my own hair before I was a barber. I cut my own hair, and that was kind of my audition to the person who would become my mentor, Joe.
Right.
We went out to lunch. I was like, hey, I cut my own hair. He told me to do it 360. And he's like, I could absolutely teach you how to do this on someone else.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. Cool. Yeah. Now, not a chance. Not
right.
No idea. I don't have, like, this isn't a thing that people want to hear their barber say. But I don't have steady enough hands to hold that mirror and clippers at the same time.
Right, yeah.
I gotta tell you, the amount of bumps I've taken in wrestling alone was enough to say, oh, this might be bad for my career.
Right.
So
pretty good.
So you're cutting hair at the shop. I noticed that you just recently hired some more folks for the shop. We're shouting out Seth and Elias.
There you go. Shout out.
Stars
shout outs.
Instagram. Yeah.
Wow. Yes, Seth and Elias are my 2 new proteges. They are both apprenticing at the same time, which is a massive undertaking for me. But yeah. You have more questions? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Well, no, but how many people do you have currently cutting at the shop now?
So literally just me and Eric. Just the 2 of us. Eric has been with me since year 1. They came on. So shop opens March 8th of 2022. That's the official day one.
How'd you get that from your watch?
I tend to look at my watch expecting it to tell me what year it is. It never does.
It does not.
No.
So I'd like to think that that's me stimming and my brain buffering for a moment.
That's a very classy move.
Yeah,
right.
Oh,
When you want to, make it look like
Right.
you're,
Look at the time.
Oh boy, I gotta go.
Right.
It's been 2 years.
Let me tell you about the Arctic ice caps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Eric actually, it's funny. Now I have to look. It's the 15th. Eric will have started 2 years ago this week.
Oh,
Wow. There you go. That's
congratulations.
cool. Yeah.
Happy
Yeah.
anniversary. We already celebrated it because I was like,
Right. Yeah.
So Eric started 2 years ago. At that time, I did have another apprentice. I started the shop with an apprentice who was a longtime client of mine. And he was like, I think I want to do this. And I said, I don't know if I can afford to have an apprentice, but we'll see how that goes. We hit a couple snags along the way where we were just not vibing. I think my teaching style and his learning style were just incompatible. But he lived out the whole 9 months of the apprenticeship and left pretty much on the last day for another shop. But I told him, I was like, I'm still going to put your hours through. You just have to make sure you pass the exams. That's all on you now. But, your hours are in, you're registered with the state. So just go for it. Don't make me look stupid.
Right.
And he's still cutting hair 2 years on. Eric's been here for 2 years. And we're finally at a point, and I've been kind of like vaguely hiring. I would have loved to have gotten people who had an established book or at least like some experience. But at the end of the day, I've tried to hire people off Indeed. I've tried to look for people. I've had people contact me, and no one fits. There's like, I don't want to have this faceless kind of like exterior of a shop where just anyone comes in and cuts hair.
Right.
I want to be picky. I want it to be someone who likes the vibe of the shop enough that they want to hang out in it, but I also want to like their vibe enough that I want to hang out with them for 9 hours a day. That's kind of the big decider. Both Elias and Seth, I think, fit the shop in a fairly intrinsic way. I'm still kind of getting to know them. Right. It's only been a few weeks. But today, Thursdays, Eric's not in the shop. They work only 4 days a week.
Gotcha.
So it's my one day to have, it used to be my quiet day. And now it's my day where I have Elias and Seth cross over because they split the week in half. They do 2 days and then half of Thursday, and then the other does half of Thursday in 2 days. So I have them cross over so that they've got like an hour overlap where they can interact with each other, because otherwise they would never see each other. Right. And we were just doing this like group demo thing on a dummy head today, and we had such an excellent breakthrough where they both like really started to get the way hair moves in a way that I don't know that I've ever seen such a quick breakthrough on stuff like that. Cool. All the time. In the 11 years I've been doing this, 12 years? 11 years I've been doing this. I've apprenticed a lot of people in some capacity. I've either been there and helped teach them, they've apprenticed directly under me, or what have you. Right. And it was, I don't know, it was really cool to see them get something. It was like those rewarding moments of teaching where something clicks, and I'm like, oh, I'm either good at teaching this and or you're good at learning, and that's refreshing to see. Right. I coach fitness part-time, and I get those moments on occasion with fitness, but definitely on a much higher occasion than I've ever gotten it with barbering. Right. Or apprenticing a barber. Like this, it was so rewarding to see. I loved it.
Yeah. Great. So I have a question. What's one thing that you can take away from your wrestling experience, and one thing that you can take away from being a barber?
I think one thing I would take away from my wrestling experience is take out of, or
like what?
Like,
yeah,
what's
one
it
thing
take away?
Something maybe you've learned from it.
Yeah, something you maybe learned, something that
a
maybe
life lesson or something
stood out to you, something that like
wrestling. There will always be carnies. I don't know why, even as wrestling gets more and more progressive, and more, even if progressive is not the right term, more and more educated, more thought out, there's always going to be fucking carnies. I don't know why that is. I don't know why wrestling as an art form is so exploitive. I loathe that. I really wish that weren't the case, but there's always someone trying to exploit in wrestling. I'm just like, just let it be an art form. Just let it be this fun, acrobatic, theatrical dance. Right. I don't know, like, it's mind blowing, and I don't know, it sucks. That part sucks, and not only is that my takeaway, but that is the thing that I wish I could take out of it. Right. And also, I think that's a thing that's important for people to realize as they watch wrestling, is like, you know, sometimes there's just going to be someone involved in wrestling that's trying to just I don't know, make a quick buck off of someone else. And I hope, especially wrestlers, I hope that one day that gets a little bit wiser and we find better ways. And I'm sure there's other stuff that's like outside of wrestling that plays into that as a factor. I don't know, like rings cost a lot, venues cost a lot. I know in Pennsylvania you have to get a ring doctor. So, you know, putting on a wrestling show is expensive. I understand where that becomes a problem. I just hope that one day performers can start to, I don't know, make money or not get dicked around. And take away from being a barber. One thing that I think is often forgotten in the modern state of barbering, and I don't know how to describe that without going into another long-winded rant, a la Ethan Wild. But
listen, he's our boss now. You know he's probably watching this. Yeah, he's probably watching this. He's our boss now.
I bet he is. I hope he is. I fucking hope.
Yeah, well, he probably is, and he's thinking to himself, you know, I don't know that I'm long-winded. You know, maybe it's Roger Dunnell that's the long-winded one.
Right.
I gotta be honest, I don't know if Roger Dunnell ever even spoke. I'm curious.
I do remember there was one specific promo that, you know, got people excited for AM Gold, and I remember just thinking every month we'd come to another show and it'd be like, no AM Gold, what's going on? Like, why aren't they letting them, you know, why aren't they letting them do anything like it? But no, it's
go figure. One thing that I've noticed from barbering, a lot of modern barbers remove the fact that it's service industry. It gets turned into something a little bit more.
Right.
In a way that I appreciate the artistry that people want to put into barbering. But, and this is something that I'm especially I told Elias and Seth when they both came in for like a little chat before we decided if we were going to work together, was like, people need everyday haircuts, you know?
Yeah.
People need regular haircuts. People need haircuts that are going to last them and not cost $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
You can give a $100 service for, our price is $40.
Right.
You can give them a $75 haircut in 30 minutes. People have days, we all have the same 24 hours.
Right.
And I think a lot of modern barbers forget that. And at the very least, that's something that I try to instill, is that like courtesy and service is more than just like a good haircut. Sometimes it's getting someone in and out as quickly as they can, because they got to get to work. They got to get to their family. They got to get to the gym.
Right.
I always say I'm here for them. They're not here for me.
Right.
And that's like an important thought that I had whenever that thought came in.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I have a huge history with barbers, because when I was a kid, I went to the same barbershop for years. I used to know the old man was like this older guy was like my barber, and I was his regular. I loved going to him. He was my go-to guy. Went for him for years, and I found out that he passed away, and it like crushed me because of the relationship that we had as a kid, that he was like my barber. So to hear that he like had passed away, like I stopped going to barbers altogether. Like I couldn't go back, because I had my one guy and my guy was gone. So I just like, I was just like, I'm done.
Right.
I was like, that's it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I had a very similar experience. We had a barber in town here. Again, he learned to cut hair in the Navy. Like he was a Navy barber. And so, this was the kind of guy that like, I'd go to the shop and he'd be like, hey, can you run and get me a coffee? I'll hold your place in line. Or, hey, would you mind shoveling the stairs out front? Like, but this was also a guy that like, when I was graduating, because I went to him while I was in high school. And when I was graduating high school, he's like, hey, bring me a senior picture. So I took him a little one and he put it there on the register right next to like the senior picture of his granddaughter. Like this guy was amazing. He was the best singing barber in town. Of course, he was the only singing barber in town.
Yeah.
And this was the guy that could find a country western movie on TV anytime, any day. It was just, again, it's one of those old school barbershop experiences, which I thought was interesting when you were kind of talking about, your kind of philosophy there. And this was something that I wanted to bring up, because I think this is really interesting, and just kind of looking at what you do there and this idea of the sliding scale haircut. And I love the idea of the, if you have some extra money, paying a little bit more for a haircut to help someone else out. Like I told my wife about that today, and I was like, that's such an incredible thing, because we were talking about
really cool.
Doing the interview tonight, and I was like, that's such a great idea.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was born of I remember specifically when we still had our first apprentice, he was getting a lot of people who were coming to him because it was a cheaper service, because he was an apprentice. And also we cater to and reach out specifically at times to like the queer scene of Philadelphia. And there's a lot of people who are on harder times.
Right.
And so we wanted to make sure that as our prices were raising at this particular time, I want to say, God, how long ago was that? I don't remember. Excuse me. Oh my word.
Where's your watch there, buddy?
Yeah, right. How long ago was that? I want to say it was like January 1st, 2023.
See, it worked.
Raised the prices from 35 to 40. I wanted to make sure that people still had an option to pay less if they needed to pay less.
Right.
So what I did, set the base price at 40. I kicked the old price down to 30 and said, if you name the price between 30 and 40. And so when you go to book on our website, especially so that there's no shame or weird feeling around it, when you go to book an appointment, there's 3 question bubbles that pop up when you book your appointment, right? There's what are your pronouns? Do you go by any other names, or what is your preferred name? I think it's, do you have any other names that you go by?
Right.
Because then that's also apt for nicknames and not just someone who accidentally dead names themselves by signing in with Facebook. And then it's, name your price, 30 to 50, whatever, if you would like. If not, this is not applicable or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's been great. We have, honestly, I would say it pretty much comes out in a wash of the amount of people who ask for lower end of sliding scale and people who are like, hey, can you put 50 down?
Right.
Like we have so many people who take us up on it in such a very even and remarkable way. So I'm glad to see that it works.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that people actually notice it. I was a little worried when I set it up. I was like, are people even gonna utilize this? What's it gonna be?
Right.
And advertising it feels icky as well, because I don't, as much as I would love press for anything that I do in the shop, I want to advertise it so people know it's an option.
Right.
And then you still have to advertise things in a way that's catching. So it's like the never-ending hungry beast of capitalism is like, well, I need people to know this exists, but I also want people to know it exists so that more people know it exists.
Right.
It's a weird, it's an icky feeling, and it's also just one of those things. I think in order for it to work, I have to treat it like a business decision.
Sure.
Right. Absolutely.
So you also mentioned earlier in the interview that you have been a vegan for quite some time, and I noticed that you have quite the design on your shirt there. So I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. What, my ripped anthropomorphic animals?
Yes.
So
heck yeah.
What is me? What is this, Animorphs?
Yeah, this is if only. There have been so many Animorphs. I'm just gonna pause on that question, Ralph. Really great question. Would love to answer it. I would love to talk nothing more than more about myself.
John's fired.
There have been so many references to Animorphs show up in my life, but I literally was looking up Animorphs books earlier today. I'm like, I just have to read the series again.
It was all I read growing up. It was all I read. We used to have like the what was it called, the Scholastic Book Day.
Yeah.
Every year, and I would go and get them every year and just keep buying them.
I remember the first big book they did. It had like the 4-quadrant cover rather than the standard the transformation, the anamorphing cover.
Yep.
And I never read past that book. I don't even know if I read up to that book. I'm sure I read.
You just read that one.
The first one.
Right.
Or what's her name turns into an anole.
Right. Yes.
Lost and gets stuck in her locker. I could tell you all the characters' names for some reason.
Right.
No,
never read it.
Never my thing.
Man.
Oh boy.
Excellent. War. All right, so this it was years later that someone told me how dark that series becomes toward the end of it.
It gets pretty bad. It gets pretty bad.
This series.
It's pretty bad.
So this is a shirt of the Vegan Strong Plant Built team. It is a team of vegan strength athletes that I'm a part of. I'm a power lifter for the Vegan Strong Plant Built team. The whole ethos of the team is that plants have all the protein you need to be strong, happy, and healthy. And the backdrop of that, the reason, at least someone like me, I can't speak for everyone on the team, the reason we care about dispelling the ideas that plants don't have protein. Is the backdrop is that if you have the ability to consume an all vegan diet, then you should, for yourself, for animals and for the environment as well, because it's the like one singular change we can make in our day-to-day life that has the biggest impact on the environment or on animals. But so the Vegan Strong Plant Built team is comprised of several sports. I'm on the powerlifting team. We've also got strongman, CrossFit, kettlebell, and bodybuilding.
That's really cool.
Quite a few bodybuilders on the team. I'm still working on putting together that pro wrestling team, but it turns out it's not really like a real team sport.
Right.
Well, your former tag team partner might disagree with that. But, when you
isn't that convenient now?
Right.
Well, listen, when you add table tennis to Vegan Strong, let me know.
Hey,
there you go.
I absolutely will. Listen, if it's good enough to be an Olympic sport, I'm sure it's good enough for us.
That's right.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, just quickly before, because we're getting to about our time here, but just give us a little bit of your story about how you became vegan, when all that started, what because I'm always listen. So I've known a number of people over time that have been that are vegan, and so I'm always interested to hear like what brought you to that decision, and when did you
brought you to this lowly place?
What made you decide this choice?
No. I'm honestly fascinated in it, because it is quite a lifestyle change, and
it's a let me try to not like chew your listeners too much into this. So it started very young. I was 15 when I went vegetarian.
Oh wow, okay.
So and that's vegetarian by a 15-year-old standard. So it was like I think there was a time where I was like, okay, I guess I'll eat a chicken sandwich, when I was camping with my friends who didn't know how to like make me a vegetarian meal at that time. And that was like in the first summer or something. And I think I was still pescatarian even. So that meant that I ate fish on occasion, even though it wasn't like my ideal. Like I remember eating a lot of tuna fish sandwiches still, kind of thing. Because it's all I could eat at the school lunchroom.
Right.
I was like, I don't know, this isn't. And then sometime through high school, I'm going to say it was probably about 2004, 2005. I remember stopping by the PETA booth at Warped Tour.
Oh, okay.
And I talked to them for a while, and I, for all the criticisms you can have about PETA, I will forever defend that they have effective messaging in a way that made me look into it. I was like, all right, so tell me about this factory farming thing. What is the deal with chickens and what, and even things like, I don't know, clothing byproduct at that time. I started to question it. I cut out fish like completely. I was like, no, I think I'm going to be a real deal vegetarian now. So this is a few more years, just a couple years after initially going vegetarian. And then when I was in college, I was making my own food, or I was buying my own food rather, because I was living in a dorm. I wasn't making shit. I was going to the dining hall and started to cut things out more and more. Learned what it was like, what it took to be vegan. The summer before going off to college, I had worked at a barbecue restaurant that was down the street from a vegan restaurant or vegetarian restaurant. They were a vegetarian restaurant at that time. They hadn't gone vegan yet themselves. Called Living on the Veg in Long Beach Island, New Jersey, now Manahawkin, New Jersey.
Hey.
Big ups.
Yes.
Same thing. My business wouldn't exist without them, because they became lifelong friends. I would just go there every day for lunch, and I would talk to them. And we talked about vegetarianism. We talked about punk. We talked about whatever. I'm going to take a step backward. The reason I became vegetarian when I was 15 was a combination of several things. One, I was really into punk and hardcore music, which there's a long history of vegetarianism and veganism in both of those scenes.
Okay.
I remember being into the Ataris when I was 13 and reading in the liner notes them doing all of their thank yous and talking about they had a section in the, I think the liner notes for End is Forever, talking about veggie burgers.
Oh yeah,
literally just this section in the back of their third LP,
right,
talking about veggie burgers. And
why not?
This girl that I had a crush on, she was like my first girlfriend. Her older brother was vegan. I was like, what is that? And she was vegetarian, and so I went vegetarian for her for Lent that year, whatever year that would have been.
Right.
Was I 14 or was I 15? I think it was 15. So for Lent, and then I just never stopped. Cut to PETA, cut to college, starting to cut more and more stuff out. I bought soy milk, even though I was still using whey protein powder for my workouts. But I was using soy milk because it was more shelf stable. I was just like keeping it before I was putting it on the in the fridge. I was like buying these weird little box cartons, which you can still find somewhere in the grocery store. I couldn't even tell you where it is, but it's the old world way of buying like alternative milks. You could buy it next to rice milk and stuff like that. And then, excuse me, my word. Then about 2009, and I had dabbled with, a couple weeks of being vegan here, just unintentionally, just like, oh yeah, I guess I was vegan for those 2 weeks.
Right.
In 2009, I was really thinking about it for a long time, having like these internal ethical dilemmas of like, why am I doing this if I know these things? I know where dairy comes from. I know what eggs are, and I don't like these practices. And I said, fuck it. I'm just going to go vegan. I already buy all my own food.
Right.
I don't go home and my parents have to worry about it. And even then, my mom had been, who's like the one who cooks at home, we're an Italian family, just the structure of things.
Right.
Sure.
She'd been supportive. She would always make me my own food anyway.
Nice.
So I was like, yeah, I'm just going to become vegan. So I remember distinctly the last thing I ate, May 2nd, 2009, that was non-vegan was this god-awful cake from an episode of Cake Boss.
Oh, jeez.
The second episode of Cake Boss. It was the New Jersey Zombie Walk.
Okay.
Formerly the Asbury Park Zombie Walk.
Yes.
There's a clip during the end credits of me dressed as a zombie digging my hand into or taking a large bite out of one of the worst cakes I've ever
jeez.
in my life.
Oh, no. Oh, boy.
Take that, buddy. Cake
there
boss.
You go. Yeah.
Wow. Garbage.
Well, is Philadelphia a very accommodating city for vegans?
It used to be much more. I would say it still is, but it used to be more. Vegan restaurants haven't been doing so well lately. I don't know why that is. I'm seeing this as a phenomenon in other places. We just lost like an excellent burger place called Pom Pom that I think the chef had some things going on in life. He was like, I can't balance all this anymore, so I've got to go.
Right.
But I'm trying to think of what else. Algorithm was a local vegan company that both their storefront and their food truck had to take a dive. I know Primary Plant-Based has reached out for investors, which is a scary vibe because I absolutely love that restaurant. But we also do have some good like high-end vegan food. Right. There's a place called Pietramala, Veg. Charlie Was a Sinner, Bar Bonbon. Excellent higher-end restaurants. And then we've got some amazing other little accoutrement in the way of like
Mm-hmm.
an all vegan cafe by the name of Grindcore House. That's an establishment here in
Nice.
Philly. And
There you
then
go.
there's the Tasty, which is like a vegan diner / luncheonette.
Okay.
20th Street Pizza is an all vegan pizza shop, formerly Blackbird Pizza. So
Mm-hmm.
they pivoted and made just like higher end pizza, but it's amazing.
Right.
And then, you know, a lot of bars have, I could get myself a seitan cheesesteak. This is Thai food from a non-vegan place that makes like, they have seitan, they have tofu on the menu.
Okay, cool. Right.
Interesting.
I'm able to get my protein. This is a red curry that is
Nice.
just absolutely delicious. It's got pumpkin in it.
Oh,
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, my partner works in an all vegan bakery called Crust
Oh.
Vegan Bakery.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so there's plenty of options.
Mhm.
I wish it were more, but that is me being greedy. I think at the end of the day, rather than me wishing that there were more options to go to, I wish more people took a day, 2 days, 3 days out of their week to say, today no animal products. You know, those
Right.
little changes make big waves. You know,
Right.
so those little things are always nice to see. So, you know, maybe in the future when people start to do stuff like that, we'll see more options pop up.
Mhm.
But, you know, so long as there's one thing I can get that's not a salad or just French fries at the bar
Right.
that I go to with my friends,
Mhm.
then that's fine for me. You
Mhm.
know,
Sure.
it doesn't
Right.
always have to be a cheesesteak
Yeah.
because some people get that wrong, and
Right.
that's disgusting.
Yeah.
That's really sad. I'm like,
Mhm.
it's easy. It's 3 ingredients. There's like bread, there's like vegan meat, and there's vegan cheese.
Yep.
well, this has been quite the fascinating discussion. I feel like there's a number of things that we can really kind of ramble on about, and I'm
Yes.
sure
You know I can.
at some future date we will find some time to get together again here and just,
Yes, absolutely.
Would
chat
love
it up
to.
because this was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
It was.
So the Barbershop is in Fishtown. It's at 1431 East Montgomery Avenue, correct?
Yes, that is it. Thank you.
Awesome. And again, you have no phone, but you
No
book
phone,
appointment-
all booking online, baby.
Yep, booking through the website. So that's vinniesbarber.shop. And let's see, 11 to 7 Tuesday through Friday, Saturdays 10 to 3, and of course you've got your 3 to 4 decompression time during
Bam.
the days that you're closed.
Damn. Did I write that somewhere? Does that say? Is it,
Listen, I know what I'm doing.
Listen, he knows. He knows,
I'm a
man.
good host.
did you tap into my security camera? I have customers who have come to me for years who don't know that.
The crack research team.
We're on it, man.
Holy
We're
yeah.
on it.
When we say crack research team, we ain't kidding.
Yeah. Wow.
All right.
Brody
Well,
on research over here.
Right? Yeah.
well, this has been super fun.
This is great.
We'll have to have you on again and just chat it up.
Absolutely.
I would love to.
It was a lot of fun. All right, so we're gonna wrap things up here. We'll be with you in just a few moments. All right, man. I'm glad we finally got that in the
Yes,
books.
I'm glad we
We've
got it
been
out of
trying-
him for the first time.
You know, Vinnie is such an interesting guy, and you know, we said this during WrestleMania week, but you know, you have people that are either in the world of wrestling or wrestling adjacent, you know, and you want to be involved with people that you know are good people. And when you look at the things that Vinnie's doing with the barbershop and just, you know, the vegan outlook and all of these things, you know, you see somebody who's a really good person. So I'm super excited to have had the time to chat with him today. I'm sure we will be talking to him real soon. But if you're anywhere, if you're in the Philadelphia area, if you're there for any reason, you know, support Vinnie's Barbershop.
Yes.
It is
Absolutely.
it is a great place and a great friend to have in all
Absolutely.
of this. You know, great stuff from good people. So
Indeed.
super exciting. Guys, if you are seeing this on Tuesday, you're seeing this on Patreon, and we thank you for Patreon. But if you're not seeing this until Saturday on YouTube, what are you doing? We got to
get over there.
It's
Yeah.
patreon.com
Join us.
/at Opinion City Pod.
Join
We're at Opinion
us.
City Pod everywhere. So come and join the Patreon. Get that 5-day early access to Wrestling with Life. We've got other great stuff over there for you as well. And of course, like, share, and subscribe on YouTube.
All the good things.
Follow us on all the socials. And guys, again, make sure you're following Vinnie's Barbershop on social media. Make sure you're supporting them every way you can. And with that, that's going to wrap up this episode of Wrestling with Life. For Parmesan, for Vinnie, I'm King Ralph. And guys, we will see you next time.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time